We welcome all of you who have tuned in to TexasSports.com for our special conversation with the University of Texas Vice President and Director of Athletics, Christel Conte. My name is Craig Way. Glad to have you with us. Hey, CDC, first thing I got to ask is about the beard. I think we both took a very similar path on this right around the time that we all got sequestered in all this. How long have you been growing the beard, and are you happy with it right now?
Well, I don't say I'm happy with it, but it does it makes for a quicker shower because I shave in the shower. But I told my wife, I said, we had an all-staff meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we said that this is what was happening. The campus was shutting down, and I vowed at that point in time that I'm not going to shave until our next competition. So I might be looking like Duck Dynasty in the fall, but the idea that we're not having any competition this spring and not able to be around our student athletes and staff, it's made for a funny conversation at home, but I can't wait to see how this beauty looks in about 4 months from now when we come around the fall.
Okay, all right. By the way, with the hat on, you look like you're ready to go out and play tennis.
I'm afraid if I take my hat off, it's and I haven't been able to find a barber either, so it's just like it's just a disaster.
Let me. What you just pointed to is something that we're all getting used to. I think the new normal is what everybody's calling it, all those sorts of things, the adjustments, the sacrifices, all of that stuff that we're having to do and the adjustments we're having to make right now. I guess a good place to start would be that your coaches, your athletic staff, obviously the student athletes. This is a major adjustment for everybody, but let me start with them and the vibe that you're getting, the feedback you're getting in your conversations with your coaches and your student athletes on how they are adjusting to all of this.
I think it's tough for everybody. If you look at our student athletes, we were having such an awesome spring. Of all of our sports in the spring, we're in the top 5 in the country. Majority of those sports and several more number 1 in the country. And baseball was off to a roaring start. So when you start to think about the momentum we were having, we've been having both our men's and women's basketball teams in the Big 12 tournament, getting ready to play that morning, and then both our men's and women's swimming team getting ready to head on to the national championships. It was just surreal moment. And you look back in your toolkit, there's not a manual for this at all, what is actually transpiring. I go back to my thought. I remember when 9/11 happened. I'm thinking, what did we do during that time? And it took us to our knees as a nation, but we galvanized around sport. We were able to, President Bush threw out that first pitch in Yankee Stadium, and every single college around the country and university was doing something special to unite the country. When this happened, and how this virus has taken hold of our country and sports just being stopped. Our basketball team was warming up, and we walked off and said, guys, it's no longer. And then right after the NCAA tournament shut down. And we know that sport is a critical part of our emotional psyche. We galvanize around that. We celebrate that. And for us to be home and wondering and watching what's happening around the world, life is first and foremost number 1. And we have to feel for those that have lost, the families have lost loved ones, and we need to figure out a way to suppress this virus and find a cure. But at the end of the day, President Trump has told us, stay in place. Our mayor, stay in place. If we stay in place and do nothing, this will dissipate, or at least we'll balance out the curve, and we'll be able to see what happens as the months and days come along. But for sure, our student athletes feel the pain, but they know their parents, they know their grandparents, they know everyone around the country is going through the same thing. So it's just really surreal, and I feel for them.
You know, what's really cool right now is you mentioned about everybody staying in place, and that includes your cat over your right shoulder. It's a really good scene to see your cat there is just really taking all this in.
We have 3 of these cats in the house, and then we have 1 stray one outside and a little dog. I mean, it has been a disaster to stay in place for me. The big deal is to control the remote control, because if not, you're watching The Notebook, The Bachelorette, how to lose a dude in 7 days. I mean, there's some real movies that just drive me crazy. So I figured out if I can control the remote, I throw on Lonesome Dove. They're like, Dad, that's the worst ever, and they leave the room. Right, and then then that was the first night. The second night, I went on with the trilogy of Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and A Fistful of Dollars, right, and Outlaw Josie Whale. And they're looking at me going, well, what? I go, honey, it's a trilogy. You got to watch all three. So they don't know that it's 3 separate movies yet. So right now I control the remote at 8 o'clock. It's real nice in my house. So for a while there, they had complete control.
Nothing says quarantine like a Clint Eastwood trilogy there.
Oh, there you
go. Let me move to your student athletes for a moment, and that includes also, you mentioned about having to shut down. I also, what comes to mind, I know a lot of folks have wondered and felt for your Olympic potential athletes as well, because that made it all the more difficult, didn't it, also for them in terms of not having the facility to be able to go in and to continue their training before the IOC made the announcement that they were going to postpone the games?
It was a little cumbersome, but we knew we had a 2-week window. President Fenves, we had spring break, and he extended it for a second week. So at that time, we were just going to wait and see what was happening. If by chance the Olympics were going to continue to take place, we would have then resumed swimming in the pool and in the track, because we had so many athletes that are going to represent our country and other countries around the world in the Tokyo Games in 2020. So at that time, we were making discussions and how we could do that, because we knew they needed to do that. Once the Olympics were postponed, everyone just falls in line in the same situation that we're all in. And that's crazy. Can you imagine not having Olympics? I mean, this tells you this pandemic is it's covering the entire world.
No doubt about it. I know it's made it certainly difficult on them as well. Let me there was kind of a shift off of that, and we'll come back to intercollegiate athletic for a moment. I saw the Zoom video conference, if you will, or the video chat between the university president Greg Fenves and Brene Brown. And my girlfriend, by the way, is an avid Brene Brown fan, so she was all excited about this. We got to talking about the postponement of commencement and the virtual commencement that'll be on hand as well. I mean, that's an example of the adjustments that the university is trying to make to be able to facilitate something for the students as well as for the student athletes in it with the virtual commencement.
Oh, it's well, first of all, Brene Brown, she's phenomenal. When she came and spoke on campus, she's a Longhorn, and she has such a positive outlook on life. And today, we need more of those type of people. But it's our new normal right now. Think about, we're talking about sport and 523 student athletes. President Fenves is dealing with 52,000 students no longer on campus, research, faculty, staff. We're a little city unto itself. And the decisions he's made have been phenomenal. To watch his leadership right now and say, here's what we're going to do. He's resolute in decision-making. He has a great process, and we're just all following suit. And it's affected everybody. For someone that, years from now, they're going to say, when did you graduate? Oh, it's part of that COVID case in 2020. I didn't get a chance to graduate. I feel bad for those seniors that have worked their tail off, and they're not going to have the commencement that they have. I'm hoping they'll come back next year and say, I want back in for one, right? But so it's going to be unusual. It is unusual for everybody. But the new normal is trying to stay, flatten out the curve and get ourselves back to normal as soon as possible.
You brought up the not being able to graduate. I think the hot button topic for a lot of intercollegiate sports fans was the unfortunate incompletion of the basketball season and the winter sports in the spring. We've heard from the NCAA about the possibility of where it goes forward with restoring a year of eligibility for the spring sports. You've been very, very upfront and out front in talking about that in terms of your thoughts on where it stands for eligibility for student athletes, for those who are missing out on things this spring.
Oh, for sure. I would love, I understand the argument that the basketball seasons were relatively complete. There are some championships to play. There's 325 Division I members, and only 64 are going to get into the tournament. So I can understand why they're arguing about that. We hadn't even begun our swimming championships, but just to address spring sports for those seniors specifically. I'm a big advocate of them having the opportunity to come back and finish their last year the way they should. And that is a big component. The idea is, should we give freshmen, sophomore, and juniors a redshirt year because they didn't complete it as well, and understand they have another year of eligibility? I can see the argument on either side, because wait a minute, they still get to participate next year. Those senior kids that did not have that opportunity, I am adamant that they have that opportunity to do that, and they should do that. in winter sports and swimming, I get the fact that those seniors didn't get a chance to compete in a championship. It's just a little bit more cumbersome in how you do that because they swam the whole season. They missed out on the championship, but they swam the whole season. In fact, our teams had a Big 12 championship. They just didn't get to have an NCAA championship. So I can see where people are really focusing on the spring. But whatever we do, we should, at least at the minimum, allow those seniors an opportunity to come back and fulfill their last season. And if you were a student in student government, or if you're a student at campus and you didn't get a chance to graduate and you had a chance, you could come back and facilitate something next year in terms of extending your clock academically. But I do hope that we land on that, at least at minimum, that seniors do have an ability in spring sports to come back and participate, but it's still up in the air.
Okay, so we've covered some of the issues of the student athletes because they do come first and foremost. Let me ask about your coaches. I mean, the postponement of things and also with the cancellation of things, I'm kind of wondering how the vibe you're getting, the feedback from your coaches on how they're handling right now the period where there's so much evaluation going on, recruiting, things and everybody's is sheltering in place. How are they all dealing with that, and how do they go about dealing with doing their jobs to continue to build their programs in the way they and you want them to do when they're kind of sheltered in at the moment?
They're not doing well at all. I mean, I applaud their leadership. They've taken their student athletes and making sure they come first and foremost. The NCAA has postponed all recruiting activity at minimum until April 15th. So you start to look at just a daily life of a coach. I talked to Eddie Reese last night, and Eddie is going bonkers. I mean, think about it. He's 78 years old, and he's been the most prolific swimming coach in our country's history. And he tells me, he goes, I'm starting to heat up my pool. I need to take laps. And, every coach is just, their new normal is not what they're used to. So we'll start back on Monday with kids starting school on Monday virtually, and they'll be using the same technology we are, Zoom, in terms of classes. We'll start back up having communication with our student athletes, talking about virtual, what they're doing, recruiting, working out, having those type of communications back and forth and game planning. But the reality is their physical contact and what they do is completely altered. We know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. We just don't know when. So they've first and foremost done an amazing job of putting their kids first. But as days start to pass, they're getting stir crazy because this is not what they do. They're not a 9-to-5 person. They're built basically 24/7, and their livelihoods are built around the emotion of young kids and taking a young kid that's molded, young and crazy, into something really phenomenal. And a coach is all about inspiring, pushing, prodding, pulling along the way to get something great out of them. And that's not there right now.
Clearly, you're staying plugged in with them and with your student athletes. What about the rest of your fellow members in the Big 12 Conference, athletic directors around the league? Commissioner Bowlesby had his conference call yesterday. What about the feedback and the conversations that you're having within the league on all the moving parts that are surrounding intercollegiate athletics and as it relates to the schools, specifically in the Big 12?
Well, I'll address one thing too, is I forget it, is our staff. We have 400 staff members. They're all at home. They're trying to get used to the idea of being at home, and every single day they have tasks. So their idea of working from home is a change for them, and what they do every day, and how we're asking them to still be engaged, because they're the real heroes in terms of our athletic program. They do so many. Coaches and student athletes, they're first and foremost, but our staff is there to help and support them. And you feel helpless for them because they feel helpless for our kids and for our for our coaches, because what they normally do is they're the wind beneath the wings of that entire shop. And I feel for them, and they've done a great job of just trying to stay engaged. We have an all-staff meeting on Wednesday. I'm going to try this Zoom with 400 little pictures on there to see if I can do it. But the idea of just thanking them and making sure that they're still engaged and excited about the University of Texas when everything around this country, from the economy to the COVID to everything else that they see. When you watch TV for too long, you can pretty much get yourself scared pretty quickly. You know what I mean? I watch TV for more than an hour. I'm down at Walgreens buying Depends. I'm like, God, I just turned the TV off. I said, none of that. We're going to focus on what's positive. around the Big 12, everyone having the same type of conversations. They're dealing with a new normal with their staff. They're trying to figure out when the actual start date for everybody could be. Because I think what we got to do is we got to put a common start date that we at least a goal we can shoot for, that on this day, the Power 5 conferences will resume normal activity, or at least a look in. So there's a bunch of conversations happening all week long, and we hope to have that wrapped up sooner than later.
You mentioned about possibly visiting with all the staff and having all the boxes on your screen. Anybody that knows you and has seen you work, have seen you even in the best of times for all of us, you're pretty busy on your phone and all that. Has that become even more important to you now in terms of your communication and everything you're doing online, since you probably haven't been doing that much Zooming until all of this?
This is my first Zoom. Actually, I practiced earlier with Elizabeth, Miss Elizabeth, my assistant. We practiced to make sure I knew how to do it. Yeah, and I'm going to have one with our student athletes here at 4:30. I'm going to Zoom with them too, just to chat with them and check in. Yeah, I always, the technology allows you to communicate with the masses. What you miss, though, is just the daily interaction. You miss the idea of just going down and see what Kate and his crew are doing down in the video shop and give them the business. And you walk into compliance and you give them the business. And then you go down, and I'm a big walk around guy. I like to walk around, see everybody, say hi. So my phone, even though I'm on it, it's just when I know there's dead time I can answer things. But my actual management style, I'm a big fan of walking around, saying hi, checking, spending time, looking, learning, and then just conversing. So I'm not really I'm never in my office like an ivory tower fellow, right? So I miss all that. I've been walking around the building because, we're supposed to stay home, but I go, my wife's like, you got to get out. So knowing I'm the only one there, it's surreal. You walk around every one of those offices and it reminds you of the movie The Shining. Here's Johnny. No one's there. You can go stir crazy wanting to talk to people. And it's kind of a surreal moment, but at the end of the day, they're also realizing they're working their tail off at home. And I get all the reports, who they're calling, what they're talking to. The amount of content that they're putting on social media is unbelievable. And Kate and his crew's done a phenomenal job. Coaches are super engaged with their kids right now. Our academic staff is getting prepared to take all these kids that have been used to a brick and mortar education and putting them online starting Monday. 52,000 students will be online starting Monday. Think about the 2-week lead up to get us to that point. It's not going to go perfect Monday, but all that, and then worried about, do I get this class? How this professor is going to teach this class? What's my grades are going to be? How are we going to do? Then on top of it, we're going to have virtual graduation, and you have all these ebbs and flows. So for them, and our mental health staff has been phenomenal, our training room and our doctors. So all hands are on deck. It's just far enough. It's just far away. And that's hard because you don't get to give someone a hug and say, damn it, you did an awesome job on this one. Thank you. So you just send a tweet and a fist bump, and that just doesn't do as well as a hug and a fresh donut.
That's true. That's true. One final thing here, and toward that end, in the reinforcement that you just kind of spoke to, what do you think should be, or what would be your ongoing message? And I think that's the best way we have to describe this, as ongoing as it's all continues to be a moving target. But what's the ongoing message that you, as the leader of all things athletics at the University of Texas, what's your ongoing message to your student athletes, your coaches, your staff, and to Longhorn Nation overall, the fans who tuned into this and they're looking for some guidance and direction, some vision as to where this is going to go, and your thought on where the athletic department goes and from there on? What's the ongoing message here?
Well, on the short term, we also have to recall that we have to just sit. If you sit and do nothing, nothing happens. And what that means is we got to stay in self-isolation right now. We've put a mandate from our mayor till April 13th. We have to do that to get our medical staff in this country an opportunity to even out the curve. And you're talking to 523 type A personality student athletes that are just the very best of what they do. You have coaches that are just the very best of what they do, and their staffs and everyone involved with them that are just eager to get going, to get some type of normalcy. So what I look at from them is, look, this too shall pass. But in the short term, there's short-term pain for long-term gain. And right now, we just need to be watchful, mindful of what our leaders have told us to do in terms of government officials and our doctors and medical staff to say we could mitigate this curve by staying at home. But as I tell them, when we'll be better for this coming out of it if we do these things. What if we don't? What my fear is, how does this creep into the summer? Then what happens in the summer if it creeps into the fall? So we need to make sure that right now on this date today that we're in a position that we can mitigate as much as we can by our own behavior. To the Longhorn Nation, they got to keep the faith. They're the lifeblood of our entire athletic program. What I love about Texas athletics and the Longhorn Nation is their passion. And they're hurting just like we are. They're hurting. We've extended the deadline for our fans to renew their season tickets because they're also worried. And I know they're worried. I worry for them. I worry for us. But what I hear every day from them is, hey, we got you. We're with you. This is a tough time, and we can weather that. And we're going to weather it together. And that's the most uniting thing that I love to hear from them. Because they lift us up. Their positive energy from the nation. And, there's 30 million people in the state of Texas. There's 700,000 living alumni. And they all understand that the eyes of Texas are upon them. And that's a big thing for me to hear from them and appreciate them. And our kids appreciate that.
Well, I know they appreciate the opportunity to visit with you, especially because you probably got a Clint Eastwood, Lee Van Cleef Western on DVR and waiting for you there. So we'll let you go with a thank you and obviously hook them and we'll keep positive thought about it, and we'll do this on down the line again if we need to do this on down the line again.
That'd be awesome. You guys have a great day.
Thanks. All right. We thank you for joining us on TexasSports.com.